Welcome back to Next Gen Investing. It's now time to discuss some of the fallout we're seeing today in telecoms as a result of this EchoStar as well as SpaceX deal. Joining us now to discuss more is George Tsilis, Senior Markets Correspondent for the network. George, walk us through this story. I think this is really fascinating, and also the way it's going to impact some of these more legacy type players. I mean, tell us your thoughts here.
Well, yeah, this is ongoing when it comes to technology shifts, Jenny, from a 5G network and, of course, a retail wireless standpoint. We are starting to see Starlink, which is basically part of SpaceX, Elon Musk, founded company, start to move the retail spectrum, if you will, to direct to satellite. In other words, bypassing traditional 5G networks and going from your device right to the satellite. Now, the challenges have been, to deploy these low orbit satellites to do so. And it seems like SpaceX has really established a very nice network. But at the same time, the latency associated with satellite communication direct to device is going away. And it's becoming more competitive from a speed standpoint to 5 and 6G technologies. So what's happening here is that there's sort of a race for spectrum, a licensing spectrum from the FCC. And if you look at companies like EchoStar Corporation, which bought Dish Incorporated back in 2023, forgive me, they ended up buying a large component of FCC licensing spectrum that is very valuable. We actually saw AT&T, which is now trying to play catch up, which is a large retail wireless carrier that provides 5G technologies. They actually bought about $22 billion of licensed spectrum from EchoStar going back a few months ago. And now you actually see Starlink purchasing essentially another $17 billion of that spectrum. So that's almost $40 billion of spectrum that EchoStar has actually sold and monetized that was just sitting on their balance sheets. And this is essentially now a play that Starlink is making to essentially capture the licensing technologies and spectrum technologies to actually start to outcompete the 5G carriers like AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. So this is actually happening. It's becoming, again, much more speedy to go direct to satellite. And I think Starlink is now making a play for this spectrum so that they actually have more horizontal spectrum to offer their services over time. And EchoStar basically is getting $8.5 billion in cash, but also participating in Starlink's venture because they'll eventually probably come public. They're actually getting about $8.5 billion in equity in Starlink as well. So overall, very good deal for EchoStar shareholders. If you look at the last month, the stock is up almost 200%. And this is a function of basically monetizing value on the balance sheet. There was $40 billion in intangibles on the balance sheet, and that was that licensing spectrum, and they found a buyer both through AT&T as well as today's announcement with Starlink.
George, how worried do you suspect these major carriers' boardrooms are today? Because it kind of seems like no business is safe now from big tech as they're now coming in for legacy networking, cellular providers potentially, or do you think this is maybe a street overreaction?
Well, maybe it's a street overreaction today, but these are companies, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, which effectively have a cartel. There are other providers out there like Boost Mobile, which is owned by EchoStar, but nonetheless, these three companies really have the majority market share of the retail wireless business in our country. Breaking into that oligopoly is going to be expensive. That's what Starlink is attempting to do. And actually creating barriers to entry is also going to be expensive for AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile to actually start to encroach on, using, of course, low orbit satellites through various companies to essentially now try to block the competitive aspects of companies like Starlink, which are really trying to bypass traditional towers and go direct to satellite. So I think this is an interesting play. I think, Starlink and of course, SpaceX are really disrupting this industry potentially going forward. So for what it's worth, again, I think this is probably going to be less accretive to the traditional carriers and more accretive to Starlink and SpaceX in the long run.
Yeah, and I think a really good point there. And also, as we're seeing today, EchoStar up now 7.6%. So appreciate that, George, for all of the insight. Now we'll leave it there. George Tsilis, senior markets correspondent for the network.